All right, let's dive right in. We're looking at a pretty radical theory today from financial expert Byram Basharan. He's making a bold claim that the world is barreling towards something he calls a great reset. We're talking about a complete shakeup of what we even consider money. And at the center of it all is one very old, very yellow asset. So, to kick things off, here's a powerful quote cited from the legendary financier Ray Dalio. The whole idea is simple, but honestly, it's seismic. The next massive global financial reset, it's not going to be about dollars or euros or yuan. It's going to be about gold. This really sets the stage for everything we're about to unpack. This idea of a huge global shift away from paper money and back to something you can actually hold in your hand. So, what does he mean by a great reset? The source uses this Turkish word, sıfırlanma, which pretty much translates to zeroing out. Think of it like a hard reset on your computer, but for the entire financial system. The theory is that this isn't just some gentle economic shift. Oh no, it's a deliberate, systematic takedown of the value of paper currencies. And in that kind of world where trust in the money in your wallet just evaporates, what's left? Well, that's where tangible assets like gold are predicted to make a major comeback. Okay, and just a quick note before we get into the details, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, share and like my videos. This is not investment advice. Thank you. So, with that said, is there any actual evidence for this massive shift? I mean, it sounds pretty wild, right? Well, the analysis we're looking at argues that this flight to gold, it isn't some far-off prediction. It's happening right now. Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting. Look at the history here. Back in the late 70s, gold rocketed up over 500%. Then, in the 2000s, it exploded by more than 640%. Now, look at the recent rally. Compared to those monster runs, it almost looks small, doesn't it? So the analysis poses a pretty simple question. If the world feels even more unstable today than it did back then, how much higher could gold actually go? So what's feeding this potential beast? The source points to what you could call a perfect storm. You've got global economies slowing down, which is killing people's faith in their own national currencies. Then you sprinkle in a whole lot of political chaos, and what happens? Well, central banks and regular folks alike start looking for a safe place to park their wealth. But here's the twist. The source makes an even bolder claim that fear itself is being used as a tool to make this happen even faster. And let's take Europe as a key example here. The source makes a pretty provocative accusation that all this talk of war and crisis is being intentionally cranked up to 11. According to this point of view, the goal is to create just enough panic to scare people out of their own currencies and push them toward physical assets. It's basically framed as a strategy of control through chaos. And, we're seeing a similar kind of story over in the United States. You've got this intense political division mixed with an economy that's really struggling, and it's eating away at something way more precious than money: trust. See, when people lose faith in their own institutions and their government, that distrust eventually trickles down to the money itself, even when that money is the world's #1 reserve currency. So, gold is one huge piece of this puzzle, but where else are people putting their money if they're running from paper? The analysis looks at other tangible assets and contrasts them with digital and paper ones, which, let's just say, are viewed with a lot of suspicion. And this is a really critical point in the argument. The massive difference between owning physical gold and just owning a piece of paper that says you own gold. Things like gold funds or ETFs are basically just dismissed as IOUs. They have what's called counterparty risk, which is a fancy way of saying you're trusting someone else to make good on their promise. In a real crisis, that promise could be worthless. It's like owning a picture of a Ferrari versus having the keys in your hand. And this quote, well, it really drives the point home, doesn't it? It's blunt, but it perfectly captures this deep distrust in the system. The idea is that when things really hit the fan, in this great reset scenario, any asset that depends on someone else's promise or a digital network could just poof, vanish. The only thing that truly matters is what you can physically touch. Now, silver gets a special mention. It's not just poor man's gold. The argument is that it has two incredibly powerful forces pushing its value up. First, it's always been seen as money, and you have countries like India actually reconfirming that. But second, and this is huge, it's absolutely essential for modern industry. We're talking everything from electric cars to solar panels. So it's got this dual demand, which the source argues could make silver's price rise even faster than gold's. Okay, so let's apply this kind of thinking to the biggest purchase most of us will ever make, a house. In a world with all this economic stress, where everyone's running to tangible assets, you'd think real estate would be a slam dunk, right? Well, the analyst here has a very clear and maybe surprising point of view on that. The prediction is for a pretty serious correction in the housing market. And the logic is actually pretty simple. Step 1, everyday folks get squeezed by rising costs and debt. Step 2, to get cash, more and more people are forced to sell their homes. Step 3, the market gets flooded with houses for sale. And what happens when supply totally overwhelms demand? Prices have only one direction to go, down. The analyst thinks they could fall all the way back to their most basic value, what it actually costs to build that. So how does this all come together? This distrust in currencies, the rush to physical assets, these major market shakeups? What does it all lead to? Well, the analysis ends with a pretty radical vision for what the future of money itself could look like. All right, so when is this all supposed to go down? Well, some people think a reset could happen any day now. The expert behind this theory is looking at a much longer timeline. He sees what's happening now not as the crisis itself, but as the start of a process that could play out over the next 10 years, with the full Great Reset finally hitting sometime after 2032. And this is the end game. This is the most startling part of the whole theory. We're not just talking about what's in your investment account anymore. The analysis paints a picture of a world where gold becomes, once again, the standard unit of measurement for value. A future where countries settle their trade deals in gold, and maybe, you even pay your rent in grams of gold. So really, what you should take away from this whole explainer comes down to this one fundamental question. When all the systems we count on start to shake and the very definition of money is up for grabs, we all have to ask ourselves, what has real lasting value? That's the heart of the Great Reset theory, and it's definitely a question worth thinking about.